Here's Act Two of Death of a Salesman, and what I think are the specific details that we want to use or to at least be aware of so we can connect the ideas from Act One into Act Two. Now, things that I had said before were very much the boys suffer from the unrealistic, wildly dangerous expectations placed on them by Willie and Willie's illusions versus sort of the reality of how the modern world really functions. So I think these are going to be some ideas that you want to go back to those Act 1 notes so that you can develop what's occurring and what is incredibly significant. Now, I originally had set this up so that we had PowerPoint slides that we were going to be interspersing in here, but my Camtasia seems to be somewhat finicky with PowerPoint today. So, lecture notes. So you want to make sure that you absolutely have these materials. So here's the overarching idea I want you to have for Act 2. To what extent are our parents responsible for the people that we end up being? To what extent are our parents responsible? I'm saying this specifically because if you look at the character development of Willie and Linda Lohman in the course of this play, and especially if you contrast them with Bernard and Charlie, you get a very clear idea that somehow the Lohmans are broken. Of course, this is Miller's commentary on the American dream and how even the American dream is broken. And this idea of what makes men successful is wildly distorted. So, to what extent are our parents responsible for the type of person we turn out to be? Now, I think this is clearly the starting point of what occurs in Act 2. Now, if I look at specific details that have occurred, previous to Willie's arrival in the beginning of Act 2, Biff tries to tell Happy about his moment of revelation when Biff realizes that he's wasting his life pursuing Willie's dream. His epiphany. Now that is one of our literary terms, epiphany, that moment of realization that we've addressed periodically throughout the course of the year. This concept of epiphany connects directly to that moment of realization that attaches to the tragic flaw. So this idea of epiphany attaches directly to the concept of the tragic flaw. So I think that's important. Biff says, "How the hell did I ever get the idea that I was a salesman there? I realized what a ridiculous lie my whole life has been. We've been taking in a dream for 15 years. I was a shipping clerk," he wants to tell his father. "Hap, he's got to understand that I'm not the kind of man, ... He thinks I've been spiting him all these years, and it's eating him up." Biff has a clear understanding of Willie Lohman's limitations. I find this realization, this epiphany that Biff has, extraordinarily important. He's not going to waste his life pursuing somebody else's dream. The problem in this play is he has no other foundation to fall back on if he doesn't pursue the acceptable dream, the American dream, the idea of success, the idea that Biff has about living out in nature and kind of making it his own way really clashes with a lot of the other concepts this play is about and the tragedy that this play is about. I look at Happy, and he's just like his mother. Just like his mother. He wants to do anything he possibly can, tell lies, pursue a life that isn't his, simply so that he can please Willie. And again, I find that to be a huge piece of the tragedy. If Happy's just like Mom, and Happy is willing to completely give up his identity for Willie Loman, I think we can make that same connection to Linda. It's why it seems so glaring when she stands up to him at different points in the play. So I would absolutely address those concepts as I was moving forward and addressing these. So as we look at the furthering of Act 2, Willie is falling apart. Willie is at the end of his rope after the day he's had, and he cannot take any kind of criticism, any kind of talking back from Vic. So Willie says, I'm not interested in stories about the past or any crap of that kind because the woods are burning. Boys, you understand. Willie loses his cool, and he says, I'm not going to take any kind of crap from you because, and here's your metaphor, the woods are burning. This is the flip side to what they say in Act 1 about walking into the jungle and walking out with diamonds, and by God, I was rich. Ben says that. So very significantly, Willie has this very specific understanding that the world is crashing down around him, and it's absolutely breaking him. It's causing him to fall to pieces as he goes through the text. Now that Willie has this realization, now as he understands these kinds of things, it becomes more important. The woods are on fire. Willie Loman gets fired from his job because he's no longer useful. I suggest that he's lived in the illusion that he was much more valuable than he ever really was, and what happens then in the story is that he has to come to grips with his own reality and the lies he's been telling himself. Just like the lies that Biff has been telling himself about his value as a man, his value as a son, and how he fits in particularly with the Loman family. Again, I think very important. So it goes on further. He cannot retreat into his usual fantasy world and spin it so that he makes himself look good. The reality, the woods are crashing down around him, and that's why the woods are on fire, is a significant quote from the story. So that we know this is important. He can't retreat into his fantasy world, and he can't put a spin on things. He's run out of illusions. He's run out of stories that he can tell his family about his real worth. He now wants Biff to provide some good news for Linda. So when Willie fails, he leans on Biff, who's already horribly fragile, to provide some good news so that he doesn't let another human being down. So that he doesn't let Linda down. Already, we know about the affair. We know about the stockings. We know about Willie as a philanderer, Willie as a bad guy in all of this. So now he's trying to salvage that relationship before it gets too out of hand. So I think that's very important. So as soon as Biff starts to reveal this information, somehow anchor the family, somehow save them from what's going on, we see the same old pattern. As soon as Biff tries to make Willie happy, tries to give himself some sort of value, he falls into the old pattern and behavior. He's not good enough. He falls apart. And as my notes say, he's trying desperately to make Willie happy. Going to see Oliver, going to get specific jobs and those kinds of things. But here's the problem. As hard as Biff tries to somehow explain himself, Willie just can't listen. Just can't. His brain, his ability to empathize, and I think that's an important idea. He can't empathize. Remember, empathy is feeling someone else's pain because you shared in that experience. Willie's failed as a salesman. He's failed as a human. So this should be an ideal opportunity for the father to step in and comfort the son. Willie's incapable. He just won't listen. He has a vision in his head of what happened, of what should have happened, and those two clashing ideas cripple, absolutely destroy Willie. So I think that's a significant piece that we look at overall as we move through the significant ideas and concepts of Act 2. For all of this to make sense in Act 2 of Death of a Salesman, we kind of put the conflict between Biff and Willie into very clear perspective. Willie is now absolutely hysterical, probably his own failure. Biff is a glaring sort of reflection of what's wrong with Willie, etc., etc. So he's shouting hysterically at Biff, and Biff tries to calm him down by lying. Oh yeah, because that's always good. Calm him down and lying to him, assuring him that everything will be just fine. He says, "Pop, listen to me. I'm telling you something good," but he cannot fully continue with it. Biff is completely willing to lie to his father, but then he Then he discovers conscience. And he discovers that this has to end at some point, and he can't continue to humor his father. So he says, "Pop, listen to me. I'm telling you something good." He wants Willie to know he will make good somewhere, that his life will amount to something. Just not with Bill Oliver. Just not being the salesman that Willie wants him to be. Willie gives Biff no credit. Absolutely gives him no pride, no anything for being sympathetic to him. And this angers Biff. So Dad won't accept the fact that Biff isn't willing to be like him, and Biff cannot forgive the fact that Willie isn't listening. So this is a classic father-son, sins of the father relationship, as I pointed out very much at the beginning of this entire thing. And this puts Biff off the deep end. Says, "You think it was easy." He is furious when Willie asks him, "Where did you go?" Because he only did it for Willie's sake. I'm sorry, why did you go? Because the only reason Biff went to see Oliver was because he was going to make his father happy. Biff realizes that that's not what Biff, wants, and so he pursues his own sense of identity, and this is crushing. This realization that everything is falling apart is glaring at this point. He only did it because his father asked him to do it, because he was so worried about his dad. Why did I go? Look at what's become of you. Willie refuses to listen, claims that Biff is spiting him, calls him a rotten little louse, and then hits him. Willie's ultimate collapse. He can't handle the crushing reality that this is all going to fall apart, and so he lashes out and he punches his own kid. Biff and Willie, the two of them, hugely pivotal to this play, so I would make sure I understood their relationship. You are asked in this play to feel great sympathy for Biff at this point. He is the way he is, broken because his father made him that way, set unrealistic expectations. He's trying his best to be a good son. He only wants to make Willie happy. I think a better way to put that is he only wants to make his father proud. But Willie, way too deep in his own sense of denial of what's really going on. He's got so many illusions about how all this works that he There's no way he's going to be able to get out of this. So we can't see that Biff isn't really trying to spite him, as it says in Act 2 of the play. So I find that hugely significant. Biff is suffering internal conflict. He wants to be truthful and stop living a lie, but he also feels he has to make his father happy. These are all characters who are trapped. Happy tries to be the peacemaker. He's that child that comes in, wants no one to be upset, doesn't want anyone to rock the boat or rock the family, probably because he wants an easy life, and this really makes things difficult for him. He's embarrassed by his father, but he doesn't want to confront that because it only makes it more difficult if it's out there in reality and everyone talks about it. So I think there's a ton here too about all of this. We know this is true. We know that this sense of embarrassment that Happy has is true when he says to the girls that he's with, no, that's not my father. He's just a guy. I'm not going to own the fact that there's a reality here that is hugely more significant, because if I admit it, then I have to do something about it. So there's a lot of things here that I think are relevant to you. Now, we are at the end of this particular unit, and you do have a test coming up. So there's some interesting ideas that I want you to pay attention to. Be able to analyze Biff's relationship or Biff's attitude towards his own father. How does it change from the beginning of the play to the end of the play? How does it change when it's revealed that Biff knows about his father's affair? Significant changes there, I think. Bear your attention. Be able to examine how Biff is affected by Willie's imperfection. Once he realizes that his father can't be on that pedestal, when he realizes that all of this is falling apart, how does this affect and develop Biff's character? If you can do that, I think you're going to be probably in a pretty good place to analyze Biff's character. The last thing I want you to sort of be aware of here is what happens with Willie after the breakdown. In Act 2, when Willie collapses as a character, what's significant about that? What occurs? What are the big elements, and why is it the key scene in this play? My notes, this last scene builds the climax, so it's important to plot structure. It is the moment when we discover the truth. The truth holds the key to Biff's character. The truth holds the key to the conflict at the heart of the play. So when Biff discovers his father's secret and that he's not the man Biff thought he was, now we start understanding why everything falls apart in the play. Be able to talk about Willie's internal conflict. Be able to talk about Biff's internal conflict and why each of them develops the way that they do. The requiem for this play is the funeral. It's cruel and pathetic end to Willie's life. It is anticlimactic. He has not died a hero. A lot of stuff going on in that requiem. So initially I called it Act 3 because I think it certainly does a ton to color what's going on in the play. So review the requiem and be able to address how that specifically affects the development of the play and its conclusion. Specific. Look at Linda. In the requiem, it is for Linda that we feel the most sympathy. Totally makes sense to me. It is for Linda that we feel the most sympathy. Ironically, for the first time in 35 years, she and Willie would have been free from debt, having made that last payment on the see past his own internal problems to realize that this was going to be something bigger for Linda and for the family. The play ends. Linda's in tears. She has the weight of all of this stress in the play bearing down on her as a character. At this point, we don't even care about the insurance money because it means nothing. All that Willie tried to accomplish by his death is weakly presented here. It's weakly presented because Willie Loman takes the cowardly way out and he leaves Linda with the tremendous burden of carrying on. So use this presentation in addition to your notes so that it makes sense for you moving forward.